This is lesson 1.4, the distributive property. Your objectives are to use the distributive property to evaluate expressions and to use the distributive property to simplify expressions. Evaluate expressions. The distributive property can be used to help evaluate expressions. The distributive property says for any numbers a, b, and c, a times the quantity b plus c equals ab plus ac, and the quantity b plus c times a equals ba plus ca. It works for subtraction as well. And notice when you subtract, the second one is subtracted. So where we had a b minus c there, the second term is subtracted. And the same there, b minus c, and the second term is subtracted. So remember, at its core, the distributive property takes the outside number times each inside number. A times b there gives you ab, and a times the c gives you the ac. The outside number times each inside number. Example 1. Use the distributive property to rewrite 6 times the quantity 8 plus 10, then evaluate. When you have 6 times the quantity 8 plus 10, you can do 6 times the 8 plus 6 times the 10. Notice the 6 is multiplied by each number inside the parentheses. Then do each of the multiplications there. You get 48 plus 60, which is 108. For example 2, you have negative 2 times the quantity 3x squared plus 5x plus 1. Make sure you multiply the negative 2 by each term. Negative 2 times the 3x squared plus negative 2 times the 5x plus negative 2 times the 1. Always watch your signs with the distributive property. That gives you negative 6x squared plus negative 10x plus negative 2. Or negative 6x squared minus 10x minus 2. Don't leave a plus and negative in your answer, just change it to minus. So plus a negative 2 is just minus 2. Use the distributive property, rewrite each expression, then evaluate. It may look funny to think that we could do the distributive property here, but you really can. If you split 31 into the sum of two numbers that are easier to use, then we can do the distributive property. It's easier to do 20 times 30 plus 1 than to do 20 times 31, because that allows us to do 20 times the 30 and 20 times the 1. Each of those operations is easy. 20 times 30 is 600. 20 times 1 is 20. Add those together and you get 620. Just remember, the outside number times each inside number. For number 3, 5 times 311. I can separate the hundreds place, the tens place, and the ones place, and do 5 times the quantity, 300 plus 10 plus 1. And each of those will give me easier numbers to work with. 5 times 300, 5 times 10, 5 times 1. Do you have to do the distributive property here? No. But if you don't have a calculator, you might find it to be a whole lot easier. 5 times 300 is 1,500. 5 times 10 is 50. And 5 times 1 is 5. Giving you a grand total of 1,555. Number 5, 3 times the quantity 8 minus 2x. You have to do 3 times the 8 minus 3 times the 2x. Make sure that you take your minus sign and put it before the second term. 3 times 8 is 24. Minus 3 times 2x is 6x. Those are unlike terms, so they can't combine. This is finished. For number 7, do 12 times the 2 plus 12 times the half x. Now multiply each one. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times half x is 6x. Those are unlike terms, so this is finished. Number 9, do 3 times the 2x minus 3 times the y. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times y gives you minus 3y. Those are unlike terms, so this is finished. Notice on this one, the y that's outside is after the quantity. You still do the outside times each one inside. The y times the x, and the y times the 2. Make sure you still subtract because there's subtraction with x minus 2. X times y is xy. 2 times y is 2y. Those are unlike terms, so this is finished. If you have 3 terms in the parentheses, the job is still the same. 1/4 times the 16x minus 1/4 times the 12y plus 1/4 times the 4z. Notice the minus in front of the 1/4 12y. Now multiply. 1/4 of 16x is 4x minus 1/4 times 12y is 3y plus 1/4 times 4z is z. Those are unlike terms, so they can't combine. And if you put 1z, make sure you rewrite that, because the better way to say 1z is just z. For number 15, do the negative 2 times each term inside. Negative 2 times 2x squared plus negative 2 times 3x plus negative 2 times 1. Watch your signs. Negative 2 times 2x squared is negative 4x squared. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. And negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Those are unlike terms, so this is finished. You've been hearing me talk about like terms and unlike terms. A term is a number, variable, or product or quotient of numbers and variables. Like terms are terms that contain the same variables with corresponding variables having the same powers. So to be like terms, the variables and their exponents have to be the same. The distributive property and properties of equalities can be used to simplify expressions. An expression is in simplest form if it is replaced by an equivalent expression with no like terms or parentheses. Simplify 4 times the quantity a squared plus 3ab minus ab. Notice the first thing they did was they changed ab to a 1ab. Then they used the distributive property to say 4 times a squared is 4a squared, and 4 times 3ab is 12ab. Also, 12ab and 1ab are like terms, so you can use the distributive property to put those together. The 12 for the ab and the minus 1 for the ab can become the quantity 12 minus 1 times AB, and 12 minus 1 times AB becomes 11AB. Always have your answer in simplest form. Simplify each expression. If not possible, write simplified. Number 1, 12a minus a. Well, remember, a is really 1a. These are both like terms, so there are 12 of them minus 1 of them, giving you 12 minus 1 of the a's, for a grand total of 11 a's. Take the coefficients, put them in parentheses, and then do the arithmetic to get the final value. Number 2, 3x plus 6x. Well, there are 3 of the x's plus 6 of the x's, giving you a grand total of 3 plus 6 of the x's, which is 9x. Number 3, 3x minus 1. One of these terms has an x and the other does not. These are unlike terms, so they cannot combine. This is already simplified. Number 4, 20a plus 12a minus 8. You have a's there that can combine. They are like terms. How many do you have? 20 of them plus 12 of them, which is a total of 32a minus 8. Remember, only combine the like terms. Your 32a and the 8 are not like terms, so that stays the way it is now. Number 5, 3x squared plus 2x squareds. You have x squareds that are like terms and can be combined. How many? 3 of them plus 2 of them, for a grand total of 5x squared. Number 6 has x's and x squareds. We can combine the x squareds together, but we can't combine the x's with the x squareds because the powers have to be the same. How many x squareds do we have? 3 of them plus 10 of them, for a grand total of 13x squared. So your final answer, negative 6x plus 13x squared. Remember, that cannot combine because the exponents need to be the same on the variables. Number 7, 2p plus half q. You cannot combine p's with q's. This is simplified. For number 8, let's first use the distributive property and multiply the negative 4 by what's in the parentheses. So we have negative 4 times the first xy plus negative 4 times the second xy. That gives us a negative 4xy and a negative 4xy. All of these are xy's. How many total do we have? 10 of them, minus 4 of them, minus 4 more, for a grand total of 2xy. For number 9, we have a's and b's. I can combine the a's and combine the b's. How many a's are there? 21 plus 18 of them. How many b's are there? 31 minus 3 of them. Put those together, you have 39a plus 28b. And the a's and b's cannot combine because they're different variables. For number 10, let's start with the distributive property and multiply 1/4 by each term in the parentheses. 1/4 times 16x minus 1/4 times 20y. 1/4 times 16x is 4x. 1/4 times 20y is 5y, and that's a minus 5y. I have x's and y's. The x's can combine. How many are there? 4 plus 4 of them, for a grand total of 8x. So it's 8x minus 5y. Number 11, the only like terms we have are the constants. 2 minus 1, which is 1. Everything else stays the same. Remember, you cannot combine x's with x squareds because the exponents need to match. Number 12 has x squareds and x's. You can combine the x squareds together. You have 4 plus 3 of them. which is 7x squared, plus 2x. Remember, x squareds and x's cannot combine because the exponents have to be the same. Write an algebraic expression for each verbal expression, then simplify, indicating the properties used. 6 times the difference of 2a and b increased by 4. Well, it's 6 times something. It's times a difference. What's being subtracted? 2a minus b. Increased by means add. Increased by 4b. Now simplify. Do the distributive property. 6 times 2a minus 6 times b plus the 4b, and that reason is the distributive property. Now work that out. 6 times 2a is 12a. 6 times b is 6b. That's substitution. Now we have b's that can combine. How many do we have? -6 of them plus 4 of them. That's the distributive property. Finishing up, -6 plus 4 is -2b. And that's substitution. Watch your minus signs there. Remember, a's and b's can't go together, so they stay separate. Number 14. 2 times the sum of x squared and y squared increased by 3 times the sum of x squared and y squared. 2 times. 2 times what? The sum. What's being added? X squared and y squared. Increased by is added 3 times. 3 times what? The sum of what? X squared and y squared. So there is our expression. Let's do the distributive property. 2 times x squared and 2 times y squared and 3 times x squared and 3 times y squared. Then let's rearrange things to get the x squareds together and the y squareds together using the commutative property. Now do the distributive property to put your x squareds together, 2 plus 3 of them, and your y squareds, 2 plus 3 of them. 2 plus 3 is 5x squared. 2 plus 3 is 5y squared with substitution. So remember, with the distributive property, if you have something times a quantity, make sure the outside gets multiplied by each term inside. And when you have like terms with the same variable and the same exponent on the variable, you can add or subtract those together. Make sure your answer is always in simplest form.